This week we're talking about more Apple SoC stuff landing in the upstream kernel. There's the Thundermail update. There's anime Catgirls in the kernel for some reason. There's OpenSUSE news. There's FFmpeg news. There's Kdenlive news and lots more. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 217, recorded Saturday, August the 23rd. Can you export that to Epub? Hey folks, it's Saturday and you know what that means. It's time for the Untitled Linux Show. We're going to get geeky with some hardware, software, the Linux kernel, all kinds of fun stuff. It's going to be great. It is not just me. We've got the whole gang here, Rob, Ken, and Jeff, and we are going to dive into some Linux stuff. And Rob is continuing his track record of representing...
Sucking it to Apple?
Well, I was going to say representing the other guys. If there's a Microsoft story or an Apple story to cover, he seems to be the one to do it, which is fine, I guess. What's up with Apple?
I was gonna say I didn't know what you're talking about because I was gonna be like, "There's no drama in the story."
That's your other calling card.
It does reference drama in a tiny way, but
if it's got Rob, it's got drama.
So and the drama here is, even though we have reported on some key members leaving Asahi Linux a few months ago, okay, that was the drama part. That's it. Such as Hector Martin and Asahi Lina, it appears the project has been able to continue on without them. So as of this week, we are seeing a number of improvements in the works for Linux on Apple Silicon. So the 6.17 kernel merge window kind of just wrapped up and passed them by. They missed that by just a little bit. So Asahi is working on updates for the 6.18 kernel, starting with DT patches that almost could have made in a 6.1 if it just was a little quicker. But it's all right. They didn't want to push it in like some of the other dramatic, kernel patcher people did. So these DT patches they add a lot of things, like the system management controller nodes for, or SMC, for the Apple M1 and M2 SoCs, including the new PMU GPIO controller and reboot sub nodes, allowing modern Macs to actually reboot under Linux and the mainline kernel. So Sven Peter also noted those Apple SMC nodes are also needed for later enabling the Power GPIO line for the Wi-Fi board.
That could be important too.
Yeah. Next up in the list is code support for handling laptop lid events, power buttons, Apple sensor monitoring support. So James Calagros posted patches to the kernel mailing list this week, enabling the RTC for getting and setting system clock. That's a real-time clock, I believe. The HW mod for monitoring various hardware metrics like thermals and power. And HID or HID subdevices of the Apple system management controller. James worked on these patches with Sven and apparently Hector Martin. Not sure if this is Hector Martin still helping out with the project, or if this is just work that he had been involved in before he left. So it hasn't been gone too long. I think it's been a couple, 2-3 months. Finally, USB 3 support on the Apple M1, M2 devices is being added. This is something that Asahi has already had for a few months in their own code, but in their continued efforts to upstream their work into the kernel, which is glad to see that this part isn't dying with Asahi. So in that continued work, a series of patches have been posted to the Linux kernel mailing list. So it's good to see Asahi Linux work is continuing on, and to see names of Well, what apparently, this James guy, I hadn't heard of him before. I looked him up. He's been there since 2020. So apparently some longtime Asahi developers are, making their way more into the public light now that some of the key stars, the people that we saw, before we saw Hector Martin, Asahi, well, we saw their avatar because they were what is that called? Come on, John, what's that called?
You talking about VTubers?
VTuber, there you go. A VTuber. Yeah, so anyway, I'm going off track here. What was I talking about? I think it was, so those two were the limelight of everything. They're doing VTubing, long videos of how they got things working. And, they were kind of the PR team, almost the marketing, I guess. I mean, they did a lot of work also, but they were the ones showing us how they're doing it and how cool it is. It's good to know we still have people on the team working maybe a little quieter these days to get things done in Asahi.
Indeed. Yeah, it's good to see all of this continue to go.
There definitely was concerns, but Sven Peter said he pretty much would take over a lot of the stuff that Hector was doing. So then we got James, and I've never really looked into it, but I don't know who else is on the team. Heck, for all I know, there's like 20 of them just hanging out there.
I'm sure there are several, and so like there's a group of people that really like the Mac hardware, and so that's going to attract like developers that want to use a Mac, want to run Linux on it, and then inevitably something is going to be broken, right? And so they are scratching their own itch to get in there and fix it and try to push it upstream.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I like the MacBook hardware too. It's slick. It's sleek. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, I've considered. We talked about it on this show. I've considered going and finding like an M1 or M2 because I'm sure you can get them secondhand now, reasonably cheap.
Yeah, put that
or
on
cheaper than the MSRP.
Yeah, I would hope so. It would not be worth it.
I saw an ad on Reddit, I think just today, Walmart has M1s for $5.99.
That's still a little expensive.
That's what I thought too.
I was hoping for half of that.
It didn't quite pique my interest yet. I mean, it piqued my interest, but it got my interest. It didn't pique it though.
That is not the same word, peak, by the way. But pique your interest is PIQUE, I think, and peaking is PEAK.
Yeah, but
correct. Two different words.
There's a thing called a play on words.
Oh, see, I didn't think you were doing it on purpose. I'm still not sure you were doing it on purpose.
And there's also a thing called Play on Linux.
There is, but that's not what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about anime Catgirls next. And yes, you probably have seen them. When you click on an LKML link, you have probably seen the anime Catgirl pop up and say, making sure you're not a bot. You guys have seen this, right?
Oh, yeah. I just noticed it.
Yes. Now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Yeah, it's stuff like, sadly, so it'll say, making sure you're not a bot. There'll be the little picture of an animated female with cat ears. And usually it'll go away after a few seconds. And if you're like me, you've seen that and gone, I wonder what's up with that, and never really looked into it. Well, this week, actually, for my security article over at Hackaday, I looked into it. And I also sort of followed along where Tavis Ormandy looked into it. And what's happening here is this is it's sort of a web firewall that what it's doing is it is checking for, are you a real web browser or is this someone's scraping tool, right? Essentially, it's looking for AI bots, AI scraping bots. It does a couple of different things to try to make this determination. One is it looks at your user agent string. And if you've got something like a Mozilla user agent string, then it goes, oh, this is probably a web browser. And if not, it figures that you're a bot. But one of the other things it does is it makes you do hashes. So in JavaScript, in your browser, you have to calculate it gives you a challenge string. You have to calculate an additional string to append to the end of it, such that when you run a SHA-256 hash, the whole thing, the first X number of bits at the very beginning are 0. And that is part of its process to try to keep AI scrapers out of these open source projects. And this hit Tavis Normandy because he was accessing things like LKM, the Linux kernel mailing list, LKML, from not a desktop web browser. He didn't say exactly what it was using, but it would have been something like maybe a text-based web browser. What Pines is that what that one's called? I can't remember now. But there's a couple of those, or he may have another tool built on curl just to do this in particular. And because he didn't have JavaScript running, it blocked him, and he got the pop-up that said, "Sadly, you must enable JavaScript to get past this challenge." And so he found that kind of weird and went looking for a workaround. Found a workaround by processing this kernel response offline, and then he started doing the math. Like, how effective is this really against someone that really wanted to scrape these websites? And it not very effective. He sort of did this experiment where he said, okay, let's go look at the number of stars that the Anubis, that's the name of the project, the number of stars that Anubis has on GitHub. And we'll just sort of assume that each one of those stars is a website that it protects. You figure that they're all set up with the defaults. And then, okay, say we wanted to break the challenge. We wanted to calculate the challenge string for all of these websites. How much would it cost, right? Like, if we were to rent a VPS, virtual private server, and actually do this calculation, what would it cost to do all of them? And 6 minutes. It took about 6 minutes to do all of them on this server that he rented. And he says, it's such a small amount of work. It's literally below the threshold to get billed for. It literally costs nothing to break Anubis for every one of these websites. And then he says, think about this. The people that you're trying to keep out are the ones that already have loads and loads of GPU cards that can do these SHA-256 hashes. They have whole data centers filled with nothing but SHA-256 generators. And then he links to a complaint where someone says the Anubis challenges are very slow on old smartphones. They can take up to 30 seconds on some of this really old hardware. And so he basically just makes the case that this is interesting as an art project, but for actual security, it is completely useless. And I have to agree, actually. I think that is almost you can't much argue with the math of it. So it's interesting, the Anubis thing. It's fascinating. It's sort of an art project more than it is real security. I called it security theater in the in my security column, because it makes you feel better about it, but it doesn't actually help anything. But that is why you see anime Catgirls when you're trying to get to the kernel.
So this is just an obscure security feature because it's
yeah, it's security through obscurity. Yeah.
Well, I just thought it was more, just putting a delay in there. So if somebody was really hammering the site, I didn't realize it was doing a calculation. I just thought it was like, oh, it's got a few second delay in there just to.
No, it's actually calculating SHA-256 hashes. And the thing is, if you have the SHA-256 hash calculated already, you don't have to sit there while it does. So, like, you can access the site if you have the right cookie. You can access the site without ever seeing that. And so that's why the whole thing is, if someone is willing to just do the calculation, they don't have to go through that screen at all. That's kind of the point that Tavis was making, that it's like it's completely worthless for its stated purpose.
Right. Like I said, I didn't realize it was doing all that. I just thought it was somebody was just throwing a delay in there, and okay, whatever.
Is there anything that AI is good at?
Yes.
Maybe what they really wanted to do is just save on bandwidth and minimize the people that are automatically downloading and make it a little difficult on them.
Well, they were trying. Well, I guess you mean Tavis and the like.
I'm not just saying malicious people. I'm just saying people who maybe want to go on and download all the kernels for no reason at all.
No, I think so. At least the stated goal of Anubis is that they are fighting against people that are scraping these things to feed AI. They consider it to be a lousy thing to do.
So if somebody wrote a batch file using curl and just the link for every one of those items they wanted to download and ran that, how would it affect doing that?
You can't do it. You can't do it with curl. You have to follow. You have to follow Tavis's steps to calculate the cookie, and then you can just respond. You add it as a. I don't remember if it's a form field or a cookie, but anyway, there's a link. There's a command line flag that you can use to add that inside of curl to then be able to get the download. So still doable. We can talk about what AI can be useful for, but I think first we're going to talk about OpenSUSE. And Ken, is there something AI related in OpenSUSE, or is this
always?
Is this
nothing AI related in this article? In these articles by Bobby Borisoff and that he wrote about Douglas DeMeo's, and I do apologize if I mispronounced that, but Douglas wrote a blog post talking about retiring the current OpenSUSE-welcome window. Y'all may have seen that occasionally when I've brought up my VM, because I never checked the box to say don't show on the next one. But OpenSUSE's release team have decided to tweak and refine existing solutions like GNOME Tour for GNOME and Plasma Welcome for KDE's Plasma by making a new controller and OpenSUSE-Welcome-Launcher to coordinate them and provide desktop-specific content. According to Douglas, the rollout of this new greeter will be done in multiple phases. They'll initially start with the launcher we'll call the well-known legacy OpenSUSE Welcome, but without the checkbox Show on Next Boot. That's the one I never check, that I always leave checked so I can see it every time I log into my VM. And then in the next phase, the launcher triggers OpenSUSE branded GNOME Tour and Plasma Welcome while keeping OpenSUSE Welcome as a fallback. That's if it is still installed. Now, in the last phase, the legacy Qt5-based greeter will eventually be decommissioned. There should be an agreed fallback on desktop sessions without the dedicated greeter. This last phase explains one reason why OpenSUSE is phasing out the OpenSUSE Welcome window. It is considered legacy and is one of the last Qt5 dependent applications. This should help phase out some remaining Qt5 components across the distribution. Now, since I have condensed the information provided by both Douglas and Bobby, I do recommend following the link in the show notes if you do want even more details.
Mm-hmm. So why are they? Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead. All right.
I think we're waiting on Jeff.
Say, I can't hear the word ahoy without thinking of the old Commodore magazine.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why they want to get rid of Qt5. Is that because Qt5 is
most of KDE 6 being based off of Qt6?
I think that's probably it.
Yeah, Qt5 is basically getting its
KDE 5.
Point.
Yeah.
I remember when it was new.
Yep.
I remember when Qt was new.
Yeah. So what they're moving to? Is it going to be KDE? Or excuse me? Is it going to be Qt based? The new welcome window? You probably said this, and I was reading something else at the time.
No, that's going to call if you have GNOME as your desktop. It's going to use GNOME's Tour, but it's going to be customized for OpenSUSE.
Right. It uses the ones already built into the desktops, into the desktop environments. Yeah, that's makes sense. They'll get updates for free. Very cool.
They just have to tweak every time it's updated.
Yeah, a little bit. All right. Well, speaking of updates, there was another pretty big update for those of us that do video editing on Linux, at least the slice of us that use KDE's Kdenlive. And Jeff has the story here, and then I'm going to tag on to it because I've got some inside scoop. But Jeff, take it away and tell us what is new.
So there's a new release of Kdenlive that came out Monday, August 18th, and it's 25.08.0. The official announcement points out there are over 300 commits, and they fixed more than 15 crashes. Now, this release was based around making the editing experience more pleasant. So there's no new huge features. This is a polished release. They tweak some things, but it's not going to be like, whoa, look what they added. This is smoothing the rough edges. Mm-hmm. On the interface side of things, there's a redesign of the audio mixer. They made some of the changes so the levels and thresholds are much easier to see. There was some code cleanup, and with that, they were able to fix the high DPI display fractional scaling issues. The titler got some love in the form of an improved SVG and image support with the ability to move and resize items. They also added the center resize with shift plus drag and renamed the pattern tab to the templates and moved the templates drop down to under it. They added a time code widget with the ability to drag to seek in the titler. And they fixed some issues when resizing images they fixed issues when resizing images, it would also move them. So it's not going to move them anymore. Fixed a titler selection on create resized object, fixed an issue where the titler's panel width was consuming half the screen, and save and restore panel width on reopening. So they fixed the thumbnail not updating in the timeline after you made a change. Subtitles and speech to text also were hit by making the subtitle edit widget resizable to adapt to lower resolutions. They fixed crash dropping media files on subtitle tracks. They fixed a layer name width, so you won't have issues there anymore. Fixed subtitles showing up on the top layer rather than appearing on lower layers on project loading. And even the whisper function disabled translation when the turbo mode is selected. And they fixed Vosk STT producing bad subtitles. Now, as you can see here, there's a lot of polish going into this release. I won't cover them all, but I will say video processing also received updates on rendering, encoding, decoding, and transcoding. Their monitors has improvements for making sure the monitor tool is always the correct size and location, to make sure what it displays is correctly updated, along with being in front and behind the proper things. There was an issue there where it could either go too far back or too far forward based on what you were doing. Markers and guides, along with the scope tool, were changed. So there was a whole bunch in there. Like I said, over 300. Take a look at the release announcement in the show notes. That's what the link in the show notes is, the official release announcement. And there's a lot of A to B type of images, which I can't do justice on here, where they say, okay, like for example, the audio mix. So here's what the old one looks like. Here's what the new one looks like. Things like that. So definitely take a look and see the changes. And they do mention in the release how they're going to have a Kdenlive Sprint, which will be in Berlin, Germany, and start on the 4th of September and can continue for a few days after that. They mentioned in there the 7th, but I don't know if that's the official end, or they talk about having a guest speaker and things like that. But they also said there are going to be more details on the event coming out soon, so keep an eye on that. Mm-hmm. And finally, they also have a link to places where you can help out. So even if you can't program, they need documentation, they need other support people. So don't think if you can't program, you can't help. So if you can help, and if you so desire, it'd be a good way to give back to the open source community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I had an interview with Ferrit Abelauer, one of the, not one of the programmers, but one of the artists that actually use it and is sort of part of the project as a result. And he kind of cued me in on a couple of interesting things that's going on here soon. Some of this actually landed in this release. One is they've started plumbing in 10-bit support to be able to do HDR video editing there in Kdenlive. And they're also looking at trying to do GPU accelerated timeline view. And they've got a little bit of that in there with the NV Ink stuff landing. And then there's some other really interesting things that they sort of know that they want to do, like changing the way that video effects are keyed. Right now, that's a bit awkward, trying to mess with the way. So if you need to change a video effect the way it works over time, it's very awkward to do. It's very fiddly, and they know that, and they're going to try to fix that. So some interesting things that are starting to land that are coming probably in the next couple of releases. If you want to check that out, I've also dropped the link to the Floss Weekly episode in the show notes.
One of my favorite video editors, I believe, also had an update this week too. That is Shotcut, but I have not looked into any of the details, so I don't know what they have. Probably AI. Everyone has AI. No, I don't know.
Indeed, everyone has AI.
I'll go over my favorite video editor a little later.
I'm trying to remember if Shotcut is one of the ones that I like. There's like there's three sort of leading open source video editors right now. Shotcut, Kdenlive, and there's one more.
DaVinci.
I don't think that one's open source. DaVinci Resolve.
Sure.
Is it OpenCut?
I don't know.
I'm sure somebody in the audience will know.
Yeah, there is an OpenCut, but I don't know that that's the one I'm thinking of.
No.
Anyway, there's one of them that when I try to do an import of like an hour of video, the timeline just slows to a crawl and it is not usable. Kdenlive does very well with it though. It's one of the reasons why I stick with it.
Have you tried using Blender's video editor yet?
I've not. I know it has some support for that, but I don't think really the nonlinear editing like I do is quite what it's meant for. So,
have you ever heard of Flowblade?
I have. Yeah, I have heard of Flowblade. I've not used it, but I am aware that it exists.
I looked up and there was like 12 of them for Linux, they said, but
right.
The two already mentioned are the ones that popped into my head of that a little more household name.
Shotcut, Kdenlive, OpenShot. AVD Mux I've vaguely heard about. I haven't played with it. I'll have to play with Flowblade and Lightworks.
Yeah, Avid Mux is not a non-linear video editor. It is a video processing tool. It does not have a timeline. Let me put it this way: you can do manipulations, but it does not have a timeline to actually do video editing. Anyway, so we're talking about open source editors, not necessarily video editors. There is another one to consider. And Rob, that's LibreOffice. I saw a headline this week about LibreOffice, how they are abandoning something. Is this part of your notes?
You'll have to tack that on because I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there.
If you don't mention it, I'll be glad to do it. But tell us what you've got about LibreOffice and the next release.
So I know lately I've been giving a lot of love to OnlyOffice on the show, but LibreOffice is still here, and with its 25.8 half-year release, they're doing what they can to keep up with some of the great improvements. So the first things people are likely to notice is everything is much faster, from application startup to scrolling large documents and file readings. I don't know, maybe they dropped something there, and that's why it's faster. I really don't know what Jonathan was hinting at. Next thing on my list is benchmarks ran by the Document Foundation show that, this is more an expansion on that first part, but it shows that Writer and Calc, the word processor and the spreadsheet tool, open files 30% faster than before. And as for opening files, significant gains have been made in handling Microsoft Office files with this release. Example, the DocX, XLSX, and the PPTX documents are now processed with greater accuracy. LibreOffice 25.8 now adds support for exporting PDF 2.0 files with AES 256 encryption, which is a requirement for 2.0, and combines PDF and PDF/A versions into one drop-down menu. In addition, there's a PDF export UI rearranged with form section combined, new structure elements, /em/strong/title, added AF relationship for embedded files. In hybrid mode, embedded ODF documents are marked as a source. So a number of other changes, also too numerous to mention them, but a few of them here are spell check is now better in multi-language. Now better supports multi-language in spreadsheets, and there's enhanced support for screen readers and improved keyboard navigation. So some good accessibility features here. Calc also has 19 new functions. So, the basic one like equals sum, and then you sum up stuff. Well, obviously it's had that for a long time, but there are 19 new ones that more obscure. I kind of looked through them. There's nothing I ever use, but maybe you want to use them. There's toolbar changes, a new ScriptForge library service, and like I said, a lot more. But the biggest thing coming to LibreOffice that Jonathan is going to love is AI.
Oh, yay.
All right. So this isn't actually part of the 25.8 release, but a plugin that has been made available this week. Or I guess they call them extensions. So a new extension for LibreOffice allows you to generate images right inside of a Writer and Impress without any subscription fees or account signups with the use of Stable Diffusion. So Igor Tamara, he's pretty new to LibreOffice development, but he built this extension in only 2 weeks he used the GIMP plugin as the foundation, and then he adapted it to work with LibreOffice. So just took that and went from there. You guys think he used any AI to do this? Maybe a little vibe coding.
Could be.
So the use case to use this, it's pretty simple. Apparently, you type the image you want, tweak some settings, pick a model, and through the online group of volunteers lending their GPU power for free, known as the AI Horde, boom, you have an image. So a lot of cool stuff. LibreOffice is moving forward. And, personally, I love the AI stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So the thing that they are leaving behind is Windows 32-bit support. And with that, support for Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 8.1.
I mean, that's unfortunate for some Windows users still using old version of Windows. I know they exist.
Yep, they sure do. It's probably time to leave it in the past, though. Install Linux on that old box.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
So I guess you wouldn't be using the AI to generate a document and convert it to an Epub.
Probably not.
That is not part of that yet. Just images for that.
Though I do like.
Go ahead,
Ken. Jeff.
I was going to say, I looked at some of the functions in Calc. There are some useful functions in there. So if you're kind of the person that would be programming a lot of stuff in, like, for example, you're using VLOOKUPs and you're doing a lot of data manipulation in Excel type thing. So the Calc functions are going to support a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's not if you're balancing your checkbook, it won't be of any use. But when you're picking and choosing data and you're kind of using your spreadsheets sort of like a database too, they'll be helpful.
Yep. It wasn't VLOOKUP itself wasn't one of those, was it?
No,
just things that support it better.
Yeah. I'm using that as a level of instruction. So if you're like, I'm in Excel and I don't know what that is, then it's probably
not for you.
Yeah, it's not for you. It's for the kind of heavier duty coders in spreadsheet
I've heard of VLOOKUP. I don't remember what it does, but I've heard of it.
It looks up vertically through a database and finds a related item in the.
And here I was thinking if you
match.
had an LED keyboard, it made your V key flash. So you find it.
For the most part, I'm just a equal sum kind of guy and don't use a whole lot of other ones. But sometimes I do. I don't know them by heart. I look them up. I've used VLOOKUP to create some more complicated spreadsheets, but I don't have them down by heart. I always have to look. It's like, how do I do this again?
Yeah. I live in Excel, so I do a lot of this kind of stuff.
Hey,
So when you guys are talking about Rust programming and doing that, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. But when something like this, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what's going on.
Hey, I'm in there a lot too, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to know the all the functions.
I have used several of the obscure functions for doing a lot of database manipulation with Excel in the past and LibreOffice Calc.
It's interesting you say that because VLOOKUP, now that I go and read about it, it's basically select where. Select this column where that column is equal to. It's essentially the same thing as you would do in a database. Okay, yes, I know, I get it.
Yeah, except the really tricky part is when you're like, I got to add all these values that correspond to this other column or other row label, and there's multiples, so I can't just use like VLOOKUP because I have to match several because VLOOKUP finds the first one. But there's other functions for that too.
Yeah,
I'll leave that for the listener to go figure out how to
figure out what they are and how to use them.
Multiple patterns in. Yeah.
At some point, Jeff, you should just be using a database and some Python code.
Yeah, that takes too long.
Yeah, he prefers a little VB script in Excel.
Hey,
And you can
not
put
above
Python in spreadsheets.
I've done
LibreOffice
that,
has supported it for a long time, and Office supports it now.
Yeah, I've
There
done
is
a little bit of that.
a database program that comes with LibreOffice.
LibreOffice Base, I think they call it.
Yeah.
I've never fiddled with it. I know it's it's an alternative to Microsoft Access. I think Access, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is another thing I'd rather never see again.
Truth.
Any Access, like there came a point in my life where if I came across an Access database and someone else wasn't using it, I exported it to a spreadsheet.
Yep. Should be done with it.
And we're still using spreadsheets because there's a lot of data manipulation, a lot of math and stuff, and statistical analysis and whatnot.
What's really interesting is taking that and importing the outputs from those calculations into a document and then exporting that document to an EPUB.
What is it with
was a
Ken
long
and his
way, Ken.
EPUBs?
Oh, because he wants to have that in an EPUB so he can read it in Caliber.
Yeah, but we've got a story before we get to Caliber. There's something in Chrome.
He wants to skip that.
We're not going to skip it, Ken. We're going to talk about Chrome next because there's a really big deal, something I've been covering for a very long time that we've talked about, but it is now landed. And it looks like it's on the schedule for Chrome 141, which sometime around the end of next month, the end of September, it's going to be out, which means that you can probably beta drive it before then. You may be able to get it in the Canary builds already. And that is that there is now support landed in Chromium and Chrome for the color management V1, the Wayland HDR protocol. So Chrome is finally catching up to Firefox. It's been in Firefox for a while now. I've been enjoying it in Firefox for a while now. But I discovered just earlier today that about 3 days ago, they finally pulled it. And we talked about this when the code was written about a month ago. It was unclear then, though, what the schedule was to making it live in the releases. And it is now on the schedule. And again, end of September is when we should be able to get this. So if you're running something like, KDE 6.4 and you're running Chrome 141, you will be able to get your HDR fix if you have a monitor that can actually do it. I talked Jeff into getting one of those. Jeff, you're going to be on the beta tester team for this, right?
Yeah, I'm running HDR right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you look different.
More vibrant and colorful.
That's not how that works, Rob. Have you gone into Firefox and played around with pulling up HDR YouTube videos?
I haven't yet.
Oh, okay.
I've just pretty new on the monitor and still working on it. And it's one of those. It's not like 1,000 nit monitor,
right?
So, but it's definitely brighter and the colors pop more. And it's my first OLED too. So it's like,
it's an OLED too. That's expensive. That was an expensive monitor, wasn't it? But can you export that to an EPUB?
Yeah, I can, but it would take a lot of pages to print out. I got a 5K by 2K monitor, 45-inch.
All right, Ken, we finally are ready for your EPUB story. What's going on with Calibre or Calibre, however you want to say it?
Well, this week we'll be covering a lot of improvements since I last talked about Calibre version 8.4, which was way back on episode 202. This week, Bobby Borisov and Marius Nestor wrote about Calibre version 8.9 being released. Now, it brings 20 new features compared to 8.4. I am amazed at the new features COVID comes up with based on requests from all of us users. According to Bobby, one of the most notable changes is in the annotations browser, which now displays a color swatch as in the results list. Marius writes about Calibre 8.9 adding a submenu to the right-click menu of the Fetch News button that shows recently downloaded news sources. Other features added after version 8.4 include adding support for the latest Tolino firmware, rewriting the backend used to run the Piper speech models so they no longer need an external binary. In the Welcome Wizard, changing the default output format to AZW3 for Kindles. It used to use the Mobi format. It added an option to the Kobe driver to change how the Kobe display series numbers using a template. The best source for all the new features and bug fixes is the link to Calibre What's New that I have linked in the show notes. And I do recommend reading Bobby's and Marius articles to see what else they consider important.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said firmware. What firmware is that a reference to?
On the Kobo ebook readers.
I'm trying to remember what those are.
Similar to Kindle,
right?
Or the Nook ebook readers. It's the firmware on them. The Tolino is actually one of the Kobo ebook reader. Would you say versions or models?
Sure. Yeah, version, model, either way works. Yeah, very cool. I was not familiar with that particular reader. I get in my world, there's only Kindle because I don't have any ebook readers at all, and that's the only one that I'm familiar with.
And that's the Kindle app.
No, the Kindle reader, just because that's the one that the market knows so much about. It's the one that's out there. So that's the one that I'm familiar with.
There was a time the Nook was right up there as like which one's going to win out, and well, we know.
Yeah, I've still got a Nook that powers up, but just the touchscreen doesn't always respond to what you want it to do.
Yeah,
which makes it hard to open books.
I can imagine. Yeah. You've got to hook a mouse up to it.
Yeah, it just seemed like the Nook faded away. I don't remember any major issues.
The ebook reader itself did. I still use the Nook app on my phone.
Yeah, I think it was more of where the books came from, because the Nook was Barnes and Noble, and and the Kindle's Amazon, and Amazon was just way more widely available.
Yeah, there's also
widely known.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Noah Pullinger says he quite likes his Kobo Libre Color. Haven't used any of those. I've been shopping around because I'd like to find a good color e-ink reader for some of the digital comics I've got downloaded through Humble Bundle.
Yeah. Yeah. I've only recently gotten some e-ink devices, and I've never messed around with the color e-ink. It's impressive, like all that they've been able to do with that. It looks like, by the way, that Nook tablets are still a thing, and they're still pretty reasonably priced. So
They're Android-based tablets running the Nook app.
Yeah.
I kind of thought I've seen them at the store, though.
Oh, I'm sure.
You can still see them in Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, that's what I mean. At the store.
Yeah. Very cool.
The physical.
Yeah, and side note, when you're talking about the colored comics, I did a command line tip probably a couple of years ago on a reader for comic books for Linux.
Have you installed your comic book reader in CachyOS yet?
I have not. This is going to be a two-parter.
Well, then take it away with part one, sir.
Okay, so like I said, this is going to be a two-part story. Now, the second part is my journey installing CachyOS on a laptop. And this first one, I just thought we'd get a little deeper into what CachyOS really is. It's a little bit of its history, background, that kind of stuff. You know, we've been talking about it a lot for the past few weeks, you know, especially since Clear Linux is shut down. It's basically now the performance front runner. It was always number 2 whenever Michael Larable at Phoronix would do any benchmarking. Clear was always the clear winner, and Cachy was always second. And it kind of left, it was the gap between Clear's large lead and the rest of the pack. You know, the Ubuntus, the Fedoras, they were kind of all pretty close. Cachy was the one that was a little kind of ahead, you know, it noticeably ahead. And so I thought it was time we just dug in a little deeper. Now, the link in the show notes is from a recent article in phosphorus.com where they basically dug into it for us. Now, CachyOS is a pretty recent addition to the Linux roundup versus some of the old names like Slackware and Debian. It was first released in 2021 by Peter Jung and Vladislav Nepologodin. Sorry about that. And it's based out of Germany. The name CachyOS originated from the Cachy scheduler, a CPU scheduler patch meant to improve desktop responsiveness that was developed by Jung. He later grew interested in creating an optimized Linux distribution for the x86 64-V3 systems. Now, notice I said 64 in there. There isn't a 32-bit version, and the V3 means that the really old hardware is not going to run CachyOS, even if it is 64-bit. They also need to support the V3 instruction set. I won't go deep into this as we've covered this in past shows, but the version numbering of CPUs is based on a core mostly agreed upon set of instructions, which each version level supports. In this case, V3 is Intel Haswell, which was released in 2013, and most would know it as the 4770 chips or newer are supported. The AMD side, it would be the Excavator chips or newer, and it was released in 2015, so that'd be like the Athlon X64 845 or better. Minimum hardware is going to include 3 gigabytes of RAM, though 8 gigabytes is recommended, and the same with storage. 30 gigabytes is the minimum, but 50 is the recommended. There also needs to be an internet connection. This is not set up to be an offline distribution. CachyOS is based on Arch, and just like Arch, it's a rolling release. So when you install, you're getting a snapshot of the OS because that, you know, the ISO that you download, and then when you get online, that's where you get it up to date. And the fundamentals, kind of we touched on before, is it's optimized performance while maintaining simplicity. The default desktop is KDE. Now, this could be a little confusing for people that are new. There's 15 other desktops, such as GNOME, XFCE, i3, Wayfair, LXQT, OpenBox, Cinnamon, Cosmic, UKUI, LXDE, Mate, Budgie, Qtile, Hyperland, and Sway. So those are all open. So when you're installing and you have an option of what to install desktop-wise, they all show up. You just pick the one you want. Right now, CachyOS is the #1 spot on DistroWatch, which, as we say, take that with a big grain of salt. It does say, though, that it's probably pretty popular since it's been #1 for a while. So at least people are clicking on it. people are looking at it. Doesn't mean it's the most installed. It just means that it's got a lot of interest, at least. It's catching eyes. Like I said before, in benchmarking, it's really fast and only ever lost out to Clear, which is now no more. So Cache is going to be your performance leader. Take a look at the article in the show notes for more details. And part 2, I will go into my experience putting Cache OS on a modern laptop.
Ooh. Yeah, very interested in that. It's a it's an interesting thing to see what what Cache has done, and I don't know if it's going to become a leading distro, but I think some of its best ideas will of course get gobbled up by the other distros, and so you'll see it in Ubuntu or Fedora or one of those in the coming years. So yeah, interesting stuff.
And Ubuntu, we've kind of talked about in the past, is kind of playing around with. Fedora was too, making V3 processors is the only, that level and up. There was talk of getting rid of 32-bit altogether. So they're a little more mainstream, where Cache's kind of went forward and said, no, we're putting the pedal to the metal, and we're not supporting the old stuff. We're not trying to be a broad for everything kind of distribution. They're like, okay, you got to be this high to ride,
Jeff, nobody's sold me on switching to a new distribution for a while. Well, somebody did buy me on switching to a new distribution for a little while, but nobody sold me on it. And I think you might be. I'm really kind of intrigued and interested to give this a shot. So,
Rob, I'd have to ask, would you go with the default shell, or would you choose Fish or ZSH?
Default.
Yep. It's really the only one there. The only one there is for us old folks.
I'm interested. I've heard a lot of good things about Fish. I'm interested in giving it a shot someday, but I'm probably not interested in actually using that as my daily driver.
You'll have to change it up then, because it defaults to Fish. That's what I'm running right now, and I didn't choose. It's just where it.
Well, maybe I'll give it a shot.
Then the article's wrong, because it said it would default to Bash.
Yeah, it's wrong. It's or maybe they changed it, but right now mine went straight to Fish. But it still supports kind of what it's a little more colorful, and I think unless you're really into the terminal a lot and really doing some heavy lifting, I don't think you're really going to notice a difference, other than like, oh, it's got some colors. And
what default email application does it go with?
Whatever you want to load in.
See, I was going to ask Rob if he had considered changing his default mail host to maybe a Thundermail, because that's the story that he has about Thunderbird and their new professional services coming up.
Yeah, it's definitely on my radar.
and I will say, as much as Steve Gibson and Leo hate the name, I think Thundermail's just cool. I don't care what they say.
I kind of like it. I like it better than Thunderbird, I think.
Yeah. Thundermail and Lightning Bird. There's the combination.
Take it away, Rob.
So some time ago, we shared the announcement that Thundermail, a mail service from Thunderbird, and then Thunderbird Pro, backed by a suite of enhanced features, both brought to us by Thunderbird. I hoped would eventually compete with Office 365. So this is what we brought to you, I don't know, few months ago, a while. And, I've hoped for it to compete with 365. I still don't have any answers as to how it might compete with Office 365, but there are more details starting to emerge, more things in the know. So here's what we know so far, some of the new details. So Mozilla Technologies says, for users who opt in, the goal is for these services to be smoothly integrated into the Thunderbird app, providing a natural extension of the familiar experience they already enjoy, enhanced with additional capabilities they may be looking for. And the mail service plans to fully support IMAP, JMAP, and SMTP. So IMAP, SMTP, those are common. You can use those in any mail client in the world. JMAP was new to me. I had not heard about it, so I had to look that up. So JMAP is JSON Meta Application Protocol. So it's a set of open internet standards designed for handling email. It was developed as an alternative to traditional email protocols like IMAP, SMTP, as well as proprietary email APIs such as Google's Gmail, Microsoft's Mappy used by Outlook. So, with these things, it sounds like maybe it's kind of targeting, Office 365. If I'm getting the right vibe correctly here. So, maybe it's their hopes along with me. So to continue on, the included domains will be at thundermail.com and at tb.pro. But custom domains will also be supported. So, if this service product makes sense and I move over to them, I've got my own custom domains I'll be bringing along. For those wondering, Thundermail servers will be located in Germany. And, from a privacy perspective, I think they're pretty well known for that. Maybe not the number one privacy country, but I think they're pretty good at that from what I've heard. I don't hear much. So it's a good start, but I'd kind of like to maybe see some more options in the future. I don't know. I'm fine with Germany, but I feel like some other people might like other options. So another thing, Thunderbird Appointment will be a service integration into Thunderbird, enabling users to create, plan, and link to events like Zoom calls, in-person meetings, etc. when composing emails. No need to zip between different tabs or open emails. MZLA or Mozilla is investigating open standards like vPoll to allow distributed teams to edit and plan schedules. Something that typical calendar standards like iCal doesn't support today. But with something like this, it's more like Gmail or Office 365 comparable, where you could have shared calendars, I presume, and both edit them as a distributed team, as they say. Additional features in the pipeline are Thunderbird Assist. Here you go, Jonathan. Thunderbird Assist to add optional AI capabilities to Thunderbird, but only, at least the plan is to only be with the Thunderbird Pro. And it's optional, Jonathan. I know you don't have to get it. I don't know what kind of AI capabilities. It's definitely early days, I think. At least not much is out there what it's going to do. So the big question is, we are all waiting for, is when is it coming, and how much does it cost?
That is the question.
Sorry, but I don't have that answer to that big question yet. But there is a waiting list. You can sign up for today. And I'm not sure if I signed up before when I first heard this announcement, but if I did or if I didn't, I signed up again today. So I'm definitely on that waiting list, maybe twice. I don't know. I'm going to be there, though. At least, I'm going to be there if everything makes sense, if the cost makes sense, and whatever the service offering turns out to be.
Indeed. Yeah, it's
especially
good to have,
if it's only the cost of a cup of coffee.
Yeah. It's good to have alternatives, right? That Google Workspace is not the only thing that you can go to for sort of professional support.
Now, I'm wondering if Thunderbird Appointments is the continuation of what was originally called the Lightning Project.
Not familiar with that.
I don't know what that is.
Let me give you a link. It was software that Mozilla came out with for basically doing a calendar. That actually got permanently integrated into Thunderbird around 2020.
Yeah, I was not familiar with that particular that particular name. But yeah, I use the calendar stuff a little bit there inside of Thunderbird. So
and you mentioned the servers in Germany. I can see two things going there. One is I saw a map of like data security. I didn't dig into it, so I don't know how good it was, but Germany was one of the higher rated countries for having good data security, and with several countries in Europe saying, "Hey, we're going to get rid of Microsoft." Well, okay, we need a exchange style email, something more professional, and getting away from, they want to go open source. Makes sense. Hey, let's put it in Europe where a lot of people are going to want that faster time. And if it really catches on in other locations, like in Asia or North America, then, well, okay, we can add servers there too.
With this service, you bring up the Gmail, the G Suite, I guess, or Google Work Spaces or whatever it is, or Office 365. One key difference between those two services is the Gmail, G Suite, whatever. It's all cloud-based. They don't actually have a physical Outlook-like application for the desktop, which is, I think, one thing that Office 365 users really like. I think a lot of them tend to really like having that Outlook all tied together. Everything just syncs together. And this, if it turns out right, is that because they got the cloud, the email servers, but they also have the email client that you can install. And even better, that Microsoft doesn't even have, is you can install it on Linux. You can install it anyway, Linux, Mac, Windows.
I guess you could say that's future-proofing their clients.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
I'm one that something that nobody else has.
Yeah, I'm one that I like an email program.
Yeah.
And even Outlook, I like the classic version because I got keyboard shortcuts. I can do so much more. I need to be able to tear through email at a furious rate, so I need keyboard shortcuts. I can't wait for a web page to kind of load.
That's a big one.
I gotta just, I'm pumping through them. So Yep. And any Fisher Price style email client is just not going to cut it. That's what I call new Outlook. Fisher Price.
Yeah. No, that's pretty accurate. All right. Well, speaking of getting through things fast, I came across a very up-to-date Phoronix article about something that has just been posted to the Linux kernel mailing list, and that is a kernel swap code overhaul. So this is Kairu Song of Tencent, who is doing patches for the swap table, the kernel's swap cache. And this was actually an idea that we first heard during a talk he gave back a while ago, and it's a part of the BPF, one of the times that they got together, something like the plumbers conference or what have you. But it integrates swap cache, swap maps, and swap allocator right in the kernel, and it does a redesign of that code to, of course, make it more future-proof, but also do lower memory usage and higher performance. Well, that has landed. The first version of this patch has landed, and apparently it results in somewhere between a 5 to 20% performance uplift in throughput, or RPS, or build time in the various benchmarks that they ran, which that's quite a bit. And so, it's interesting that people are saying, "Oh, well, I don't use swapping at all. I'd have swapping turned off. This won't help me at all." And there are some interesting places where swap is used, even though you don't think it's being used. You may not have a swap partition, but you may still have some swap happening using something like part of your memory being used for LZMA, like a compressed memory. And so it'll swap memory in between RAM, between your compressed and your uncompressed RAM. Or, you get some other things where you may have a really fast NVMe, and so you want to set that up for some swap space. And so, a very interesting sort of, hopefully it'll make it to the kernel. Hopefully this will actually survive and make it in. But 6 to 7% in the in-memory database of Redis Valkey. That's quite a bit. That is definitely up around the point to where you can tell it's a difference. And then, of course, for some of these big companies that do this all day, every day, that's going to be a huge difference for them. But yeah, it's good to see these various portions of the kernel finally getting, someone looking at it and going, okay, let's get rid of all the technical debt. Let's actually fix the things that we know about. Let's make this thing better. And so good for them. Good for Kairu Song of Tencent for doing the work on this, and hopefully it'll land in a kernel version coming soon.
That would be very cool. And you don't. You can also have a swap file. That's one of the things that they recommend for speed up is you have a swap file that's on the same partition as your OS.
Right.
I think the swap file is probably more common these days in a lot of distros.
No, it's the default with Ubuntu now.
Yeah, it's kind of the way that the separate partition is the old way to do it, and it's less used, and it had to do with when I remember looking into it. Jumping to a different partition took a little longer. I mean, a few nanoseconds longer, but it's still
microsecond.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on how many times you're doing that. The kernel does things very, very quickly, and so it does a lot of them sometimes. And 1 microsecond here and a microsecond there, it does eventually add up.
Yeah, having it already on the drive you're on sped it up a little bit.
Yeah, I believe that.
The question I have then is, how does that affect your SSD's aging when you're using a lot of swapping?
I mean, modern SSDs have built into them now wear leveling, where they sort of detect that, this is probably these blocks are probably swap. And so we're going to, instead of writing on this block every time, we're going to write on this block and then automatically remap it over here and then automatically remap it over here. And so your swap just gets spread out across the entire drive. Jeff, how did I do?
Yeah. That's pretty good. There's wear leveling. There's a bunch of stuff that goes on. And the thing is, a lot of hard drives, they're slow enough. It's hard to hit the data lifetime of them, where SSDs are a lot faster. So you have much more of a possibility of hitting that. But usually SSDs are rated in terabytes per day for lifetime. So it's realistically, you're going to get so many years out of it. I throw swap on SSDs for I don't know how, probably a decade now, and it's not been a problem.
I remember when they first came out, it was a problem. When I first got an SSD, when I first put an SSD in a customer's laptop, it was a problem then.
Yeah,
back when they were like 500 gigabytes, maybe.
No, not even that big.
Not even that.
I think it was a 100 gigabyte SSD that I put in somebody's laptop. And then I had to go and update. You had to update the firmware on the SSD because it was causing blue screens inside of Windows. That was fun. That was a fun time. Like, how do you get firmware updated on your drive? They had some crazy hack way to do it. It was great.
Yeah, they've got wear leveling. They've got different methods to change things. The technology's gotten better. There's a lot of things that. There's better error correction now. So if you lose a bit, it's not as big a deal as it used to be. So there's many things that the drives now are so much more reliable.
Yeah.
I've heard of, I think it was a while ago, I came across a how-to article on how to set up ZRAM to use as a temporary folder and or a swap file.
Yeah,
if you just throw in a lot of RAM, you don't really need a swap file.
So ZRAM, I mentioned that briefly. ZRAM is compressed RAM blocks. That's where you're not storing just the raw bits inside RAM, but you're actually running them through a compression utility and built into the kernel. And yeah, there are some really interesting things that you can do with that. You might want to use it if you're doing audio-video conversion to be able to get that sped up.
And then you'd want to use my favorite tool for converting.
What tool is that, Ken?
FFmpeg. There have been a lot of improvements. And Rob, you'll be glad to hear that one of the improvements is that Whisper Filter is finally here in the latest version of FFmpeg. Bobby Borisov, Michael Larabelle, and Marius Nestor all wrote about FFmpeg version 8.0, codenamed Huffman, being released yesterday. And I do mean yesterday, the 22nd of August. This release is one of the FFmpeg project's largest releases to date. According to Bobby, one of the headline additions is the new whisper filter I just mentioned, expanding FFmpeg's toolset for audio processing. According to Marius, FFmpeg 8.0 now enables TLS pair certificate verification by default. According to Michael, it now depends on the Net Wide Assembler, or NASM, instead of YASM. And I'll let y'all figure out what YASM is. On the security and maintenance front, this release drops support for the older OpenSSL versions below 1.1.0 and deprecates OpenMax encoders. FFmpeg version 8.0 also added a new class of decoders and encoders based on pure Vulkan compute, implementing compute shaders, and working on any implementation of Vulkan 1.3. Enabling Vulkan decoding is sufficient to use these new decoders since they use the same hardware acceleration. You'll probably see that commonly referred to as HWACCEL. There's both an API and commands. The release notes talk about the project modernizing its infrastructure. The mailing list servers have been fully upgraded, and they have recently started to accept contributions via a new forge. Available on code.ffmpeg.org, running, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, ForgeJo instance. I am looking forward to playing with its new features once FFmpeg version 8.0 is available in Tumbleweed and Ubuntu Studio. I got a feeling Tumbleweed's going to get it first. Now, there is a lot more covered in the articles by Bobby, Michael, and Marius, so I do recommend following the links in the show notes to get all the details.
Yeah, whisper support is pretty cool. One question I've got, and I think the answer is, unfortunately, that you cannot do this yet, but can you use this to get a transcript where it tells you which speaker is which? Like, if we were to run this show through it, would it have speaker 1 said this, speaker 2 said this?
That's a good question. You probably have to provide some way to identify each speaker. And some way for it to differentiate between the voices.
A quick Google shows that Whisper X is a version of Whisper that can do this.
Huh. So the answer is yes, you can.
Yeah.
But if you do want to get some more information, I've got just posted a link in the Discord about how Whisper and FFmpeg from the FFmpeg-users list, where they're discussing using it.
Yep, very cool.
It does mean installing the model that you use separately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder how big those models are. This is something
actually. Let me.
Medium-sized, about yay big.
Model size from tiny, base, small, medium, and large. Tiny is 75 megabits on a disk.
That's not too bad.
The large is 2.9 gigabytes.
That's actually still not terrible for AI models. Not terrible at all.
Yeah.
All right. So let's turn now to Jeff and get part 2 of the CachyOS story. You did more than just dive into it and read about it. You actually installed it somewhere.
I did.
I gotta ask before you start this, could you just not find enough stories? Like, I'll just split this one into 2.
I didn't have enough. You took all the good ones, Rob. No, this was a little bit of an adventure, and this is probably a lesson why some people might be turned off from Linux. So I was able to get past all this, but it wasn't quite as good. You know, grandma's going to have more of a problem. Now, if I had used USB with only CachyOS on it, and I said, just take over everything. It probably would be a different story for the most part. But it was a little bit of an adventure. So, all right, first I went into Windows and I turned off BitLocker because I knew I was going to have to resize the partition, so I needed it unencrypted. I don't know, maybe I didn't, but I didn't know if BitLocker was going to hurt or not. So I just turned off BitLocker, and that took a couple minutes, and then it said, okay, yep, it's all encrypted. You're good to go. Then I went into, okay, Ventoy, it's got a UEFI, okay, put it in. I was using Ventoy for this. I had my CachyOS ISO on there. I didn't like it. Okay, so now I need to go in and let me turn off Secure Boot. It said it was UEFI, but it didn't like it for some reason. So I turned off Secure Boot. Now it comes up and there's my CachyOS in the list. I can select that. Starts to load. Bam, crashes. Says no init found. I'm like, what the heck? Well, after some searching and Googling whatnot, when you're in Ventoy and you want to install CachyOS, you need to hit in the main menu screen where you choose which ISO you want. You have to hit Control-R, which drops you into Grub 2 mode. Now, you still have a graphical user interface. It still looks basically the same, other than it says it's in Grub 2 mode. Okay, so now I get in there and it boots right up, and I get it connected to the internet, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me install it. And it said there's no candidate to no drive to install it on. I'm like, what the heck? So I open up, Gparted and Kparted. They cannot see any other drive other than the USB. Well, after some more searching, I found that it says, some people said, well, you need to turn off fast boot in BIOS, which I did. Didn't help. Then I turned off, there's a fast boot in Windows, and they said, people would say, well, sometimes it would leave the drive in a mounted state so other operating systems could not see it because of how Windows left it to speed things up. So I did that. The command was PowerShell space admin space dash power config /h off. So that's supposed to turn all that off. Did not help. I still could not see the internal drive. Now I could boot to Windows just fine. So the BIOS would be like, oh, okay, let me boot right into it. But CachyOS couldn't see it. After more searching, I found that Intel RST, which is a high-speed communications, instead of ACHI drive communications, it's RST. You need to turn that off. Well, in this laptop, it's a Asus laptop. Modern. I just bought it, a couple months ago. There's no way to turn it off directly. If you searching through the BIOS, you might have to disable VMD, which is for RAID and enterprise drive management, which they're using it in this, but it's everything I found said, yeah, this is not for a regular laptop, or consumer system. It's for more enterprise configurations. So I turned that off. Then I was able to boot.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Have you tried booting back into Windows since you turned that off?
I'm not there yet.
Okay. You're way ahead of me. All right. Continue on.
Yep. So then it went into CachyOS, and I'm like, oh, okay. Let's see how this goes. So I didn't even, normally I partition the drive and set up, okay, here's my OS partition, here's my home partition, I do all that stuff. Well, they had one resized to fit. I'd never seen this. So I'm like, oh, this is a Cachy feature. You just click on the partition and you graphically drag it to make however big you want your Linux partition to be. And I'm like, let's do that. That sounds cool. Because, at worst, it's, I can either reload Windows or I just totally load Linux on everything, but I wanted the dual boot. Let's see if we can make this work. So I tried it, booted, went right into CachyOS. It was like beautiful. It worked good. Had my fish shell. When I wanted to update, I type update, and it's the same as the sudo space app space, update kind of thing. It just went, oh, update. Okay, done. I mean, it asked for my super user password, but made it simple. Okay, now let me go to Windows. It couldn't load Windows. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So then I thought, oh, did it totally trash Windows? And then, well, let me turn that VMD back on and try booting. Now it boots into Windows with that on the RST, but not into CachyOS because CachyOS can't see the drive. So what you have to do now, this is kind of where I'm at. So both operating systems work depending on this type of drive communication. I need to reboot it again into Windows safe mode, so then it will take care of not needing RST. It can boot into the ACHI normal hard drive communications. That haven't got there quite yet, but because this took a lot longer than just a few minutes to describe it. There was a lot of searching and boot and let me try this and boot and back and forth. But that's everything I found. That's the solution, because when you're in safe mode, then it can fix itself and boot into the correct into the older style or more universally known drive communication.
Yeah.
That's your Windows tip of the day.
Yeah, I asked that about Windows because I've fought with the Intel rapid storage technology things before, and I've gotten Windows into unbootable states and spent hours and hours trying to fix it. And in some cases, you just have to give up. I had one machine that, I still have one machine sitting over there in the corner waiting for me to do a Windows install on it, that it's going to need, the correct driver slipstream bin as a part of the Windows install process to get it to do anything, because otherwise it just doesn't see it.
Rapid storage technology, not rubbish storage technology.
I mean, whichever works for you.
Yeah, I'm kind of more on the latter than the former right now. But I'm kind of surprised Linux doesn't talk. But I mean, I guess it can't even see the drive. Somehow it's connected into like the BIOS can see the difference, but past that, it's like Windows has it locked down with the RST.
Do you happen to remember if the secure boot's turned on or off in your BIOS?
No, I turned the secure boot off.
Okay.
Yeah. I had to, because Ventoy wouldn't fully boot. Even though Ventoy was UEFI, it complained about the keys and didn't.
And I just have to ask this. Was it the latest version of Ventoy?
I'd have to look. I don't remember.
That is something I have run into before. I have my famous story of having to boot into Windows on my laptop to get Linux to work again, and that was because I put a new version of Fedora on Ventoy and had not updated Ventoy to go with it.
The reason I ask is the version of Ventoy I've been using recently. Actually, after I select the ISO to load, it goes to another screen where it prompts me to run it as normal, use the WIM boot, or grub2 boot.
Oh yeah, it does give you sometimes it'll give you that option.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I thought it was a pretty I want to say I thought I just had put one on there. It was pretty recent, but
they removed that feature and now it's hidden behind a keyboard shortcut.
Or he's on one of the versions where he did remove it, and they're added it back in a later version.
I have no idea. All right. Well, let's get to some command line tips now that we've gone through the CachyOS drama and complained about Windows and Intel, as we do around here. Rob's going to kick us off with the command line tips, and you're going to talk about GNOME.
I am. I got to bring back my love of GNOME to everybody. So over the years, I've brought various GNOME extensions to the show and shared them. And I'm pretty sure I've said, I like GNOME, but I think vanilla GNOME is a little bit useless. You kind of need extensions really to make it customizable to fit your need. But, I've never really showed about, the ways or how to get GNOME extensions. So the way I like to do it, there's a couple, but the way I like to do it is you just open your web browser to extensions.gnome.org. And you can look at all the extensions there. And once you set it up, you can install the extensions right from that page. So here, for those watching, I have not done the integration yet. At the top, you can see here, it says, click here to install the browser extension. So if you do that, you can install that browser extension. And then if I refresh, it's going to allow me to use a web browser there. Well, actually, it's not going to yet, because if I close this, open that back up, and go to extensions, search for GNOME extensions. Now it says no such native application org.gnome Chrome GNOME shell. So there's a couple ways to fix that. You could just install the Chrome extension, but what I do is this is where I run, where I install gnome-shell-extension. So it's as simple as doing a sudo apt install GNOME extension. So once you do that, then you have a couple ways to manage your extensions. One, if you open it up and do GNOME extensions, then you'll see that that little pop-up's not there. And I can search through, pick what I want. Let's just say I want this first one here. All I got to do is turn it on, and it's going to install it. Now, another way to manage it, if you go to extensions, because what you also did is you install the extensions program, app, whatever. You do that, and it's going to open up a little extension manager. So I can disable all extensions. I've only installed one extension on this desktop so far, and it's on. I can just turn it off. There are system extensions, which since this is Ubuntu, these are ones that I guess Ubuntu installed. But if you don't like the ones that Ubuntu installed, or you want to enable some other ones, you can turn them off, turn them on, and manage your extensions right from there. So that's how you can install and manage your GNOME extensions. And I'm going to start a little series here and show you some of my other favorite GNOME extensions and how they work in the upcoming weeks.
Very cool. There are some fun GNOME extensions that I've played with on this laptop. Some of them I really like. All right, Ken, let's talk about WirePlumber some more. So you need to unmute yourself unless you've crashed WirePlumber.
Not yet. I'm working on it.
That's probably to come.
Had to get back to the Stream Deck page that had the mute button.
Oh, yes.
But yes, we're going to be talking about WirePlumber. This week, I'm going to demonstrate using WirePlumber's command WPCTL to control your volume. So here I am in the command line. I've got the sound systems settings up so you can see a visual indication, since we won't be able to demonstrate with audio. But let me go ahead and give you a quick overview. The commands are going to be WPCTL, get volume. If you put a -H beside that, that explains how to use it. And you just want to put the ID of the device you want to get volume from. For those of y'all listening, I've also got the status of my WirePlumber system, and it's showing that my sync is a built-in audio analog stereo ID number 50. So I just type that ID in, and it gives me that the volume is 1. Okay, now how do you set the volume? You're going to use WPCTL sit-volume. Again, we're going to use the -8s to get help on how to use the command. Obviously, you're going to need the ID of the device. So that's going to be 50 again. One of the ways you can do that is by typing in the volume percentage you want to set it to. You can either do it as a, say, for example, 50%. And again, for those of y'all listening, my sound system shows the line out being changed to 50%. You can also just type in 0.25, and that sets it again. Or you can do 50% plus to increase it to 75%, or 0.25 minus, or 24 actually, and that decreased it down to 51%. Now, what's really handy, and I can see using this in a script, is how you can mute your device. It's going to be WPCTL sit-mute, and you can just toggle the mute, or you can put a 1 or a 0 after the ID for the device that you're wanting to mute. So let's do, here we're going to do ID 50 again for my line out with 1. And for those of y'all listening, my sound system shows that I muted the device, or I can do a 0. Now, as I mentioned, you can toggle it by just typing toggle. And for those of y'all listening, I just did the WPCTL sit-mute 50 toggle twice, and the sound system settings showed that the line out did get muted and then back on.
Very cool.
And that is, I can see how this could be used, say, for example, with forcing your audio to not be muted as your boot up script. Mm-hmm. Sometime after you've gotten up to your GUI, tell it to set the mute to 0 just to force the audio out.
Yep. You know what you need? You need to include some AI in there. They'll automatically unmute you when your mouth is moving.
That's hilarious.
Are you sure you want that, Rob?
No, probably not.
No. All right. Now, Jeff, what are you doing to your monitor again?
So, yeah, thanks, Rob. So this is for when, so I've got an OLED monitor and brand new to me, and I want it in power save quite a bit because I don't want to burn images in if I'm not actually using the monitor. Well, KDE has an issue, and probably NVIDIA in there too, being the lone Team Green user on the board here. I found that sometimes if the computer sits for quite a while, the monitor goes into power save, but it won't come back awake. So it's in that, kind of sleep mode that monitors get into, or it's just a black screen, but it's still on. It's not totally powered off, but it's in the low power mode. Mm-hmm. Normally, you wiggle your mouse or something, hit the keyboard, and it pops right up, wakes up, and away you go. Well, it wouldn't do that. And after doing a little searching, I found that that's something that's been around for at least a year in KDE, mostly with NVIDIA systems. But a workaround that I wound up finding, and it works great for me, and this is going to be super simple, is you drop to the console. This is your Control Alt and hit like F3. And if you wait a moment, you'll see the console come up. You don't even have to log in. You just saw it. Okay, your monitor's awake. And for whatever reason, they say you got to hit Control Alt F2. It'll bring up a pointer, and it's always on mine. It's always a pointer with a black screen, and then you hit Control Alt F1. That brings you back to your normal graphics window, and now everything's woke up and it's working great. So, if you have a problem with your monitor not waking up, Control Alt F3, F2, F1, and you give it a few seconds between each one, and it'll bring you back without no need to reboot your machine or anything like that.
And I think the specific Control Alt F may depend on your distro. I think I've seen distros that have like F6 is where your desktop is and stuff like that.
F6 or F7. Yeah. I've seen this problem before too, and I have one monitor, the conventional monitor that I've got turned. It'll come right up when you go off a power save. It's the OLED that is not. I always sort of assumed that it's because I'm having to use a DisplayPort to HDMI adapter to be able to get HDMI 2.1 support, because reasons. Anyway, and so my fix for that, actually, it's sort of a similar workaround, but instead of going to the console, I will just pull up the display manager on the working monitor and change the refresh rate on the monitor that's not working. And that will usually do it. So I'll bump it from 120 hertz down to 100 hertz, let the monitor come up, and then you can move it back, and it'll be happy that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I've only got one monitor though, so. But there's no HDMI converter in there. I'm DisplayPort all the way through, but I am going through a KVM switch.
That could be part of it.
So maybe that's got something to do with it. It wasn't a big deal on my old monitor, which is a regular LCD, but the OLED, it seems like it's now. I am running the beta software, so I'm running backports, so I'm running some pretty cutting edge software. So I don't know whether I had an update in there that caused this, or if it just happened to be the monitor. The OLED doesn't like it takes longer to wake up or something.
Yeah, that's very possible. It's the OLED. Yeah, interesting stuff. All right. So last week I asked a question of the Hive Mind here, and I did get an answer, and I'm going to try to demonstrate exactly what we were talking about. Yeah, here we go. So
before you get started, Jonathan,
yes,
could you do Control Plus a couple of times?
Oh, to make the text bigger.
Yes, please. My eyesight's not that good.
Yeah, all right. So this will probably work for us. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, yeah, that's great. So the entire question was, when you run ls, you get other programs in the terminal, you get colors. But when you then run something like ls and then you pipe it through grep or cat, you get black and white, right? And there are times where it's really, really nice to be able to have the colors. And so, say we wanted to search for that Nano PB, we do an ls and then grep for Nano in the names, and you get this. It drains all of the colors, and then it does a highlight on the thing you searched for, right? Which, okay, that's useful sometimes, but not necessarily what you want. And so I asked the Hive Mind, and we sort of went on this adventure, and I've messed with this some this week to figure out what you do to fix this. And there is a command. It's actually part of the expect command, but it's packaged as its own binary. It's unbuffer. And essentially this takes the output. It gives the tool its own like pseudo TTY. So it sort of emulates that it's spitting out directly to a terminal. And then it captures that output and then lets you pipe it around. And so use unbuffer. And I thought, okay, fine. Unbuffer ls, and you can pipe that through cat. This would be a great place to check it. Surely this will give me colors, right? No, it does not. It's okay. Well, why does it not? Well, it's because this is not an exact science. and every command works a little bit differently on how like they detect, am I outputting to a buffer? Am I outputting directly to a TTY? You know, should I have color or not? So with the ls command, what you want to do is explicitly call out the -- color equals auto. And then you can pipe it around and you get your colors back. All right. So that is a useful one to know. And I will go ahead and show you the command that I was working with. It's a platform IO command. I was running the tests. And the annoying thing about this is if you don't use grep, and here I've got a -v to invert. And if a line has skipped in it, I don't care. I don't want to see that. But at the same time, it's very, very nice to get the colors in here. And so based on this unbuffer command and a couple of other things, I was able finally to get my colors back. And you'll see after things build, we'll get errors, and the error messages will be in red again, which is really all I wanted. This is all I wanted in life. I did not want to have to scroll back up through about 100 lines of skipped tests, and I wanted to be able to get my error messages back in color. And of course, this will take a bit. There we go. Error messages in color. Something's not working. I can go fix it, and I don't have to scroll up through 100 skipped commands. Everything is right on the command line once again.
Good job, HiveMind.
Thank you to the HiveMind for helping me figure that out. It's extremely helpful.
I noticed that there's a -p that's used, I guess, for when you're running pipe or use. It's basically used when you're using unbuffer in a pipe lace. That it recommends to use the -p flag.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what exactly that does. I think that forces line buffering.
I think it's where you've got a pipe process where you're doing a process, piping it to whatever process that you want to unbuffer, and then piping that into a third process.
Right.
From the example they give.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the -p. Okay, -p is for pipeline mode, where unbuffer reads from standard in and passes it to the command in the rest of the arguments. Okay, there you go, pipeline mode. All right, now we know. And now you know how to get your colors where they're supposed to be, even if you're using Unix-style command piping.
The more you know.
And you know what one bug comes with this program?
What's that?
The man page is longer than the program.
Sometimes that's the way it works.
According to the man page, anyways.
Yeah, that's funny. All right. So that is the show. I'm going to let each of the guys plug whatever they want to, get some closing thoughts in. If they have anything, get the last word. Rob gets to go first.
All right. Everybody, if you want more of me, you can come find me at robertpcampbell.com. On there, that's my webpage. You'll find links to my places you can connect at my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my Blue Sky, my Mastodon. Or if you really appreciate me, you can click on this little coffee cup and donate me a cup of coffee. Or more than one, however many you want. Or if you really appreciate Jeff, I've paid him in advance for a couple, so you can donate a couple to him so he doesn't owe me anymore. You guys know how horrible it is to owe somebody. I hate owing people. I don't want to owe people anything. Jeff doesn't either. So right there, you can help him out.
Absolutely. All right, Ken, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Do what? But actually, mine is on the spur of the moment. I'm going to recommend to everybody checking out a book, Exploring Expect, a TCL-based toolkit for automating interactive programs by Don Leibs and published by O'Reilly and Associates.
Oh, very cool. Expect is it's another one of those Swiss Army chainsaws where you can do a lot with it, but it is not trivial to understand your first time around. I've done a little bit of expect scripting, and yeah, it's challenging. Can be.
Is that kind of like awk? It's a language unto itself.
I think it just about would be. Yeah. You use expect. Like if you need a program to automatically, I think it was originally like Telnet style stuff, but you need to be able to interact with a Telnet port. And so you need to be able to receive things and then send commands, send text at the right time. You would use expect to do that. And so essentially it'll say, I expect to see these bytes come across the line. When I see these bytes, then send this back. And yeah, it can get pretty detailed as far as what all it supports.
That sounds like a little too much to expect.
But all right, Jeff.
Sounds like a future command line tip.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't really have anything today, so Poetry Corner. Did you restart it? Or clear your cache and cookies? Did you really, though? Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Did you really, though?
That's not a poem. That's just tech support.
It's tech support in iambic pentameter. So it is a poem. All right. Excellent. Thank you guys for being here. If you want to find more of me, there's of course Hackaday, and we talked about in the show the two things I do at Hackaday that are really appropriate here, and that is FOSS Weekly, which we record on Tuesday, and we put the article up on Wednesdays, and then Friday mornings we have the security column, and again we reference both of those in the show today. We appreciate everybody that's here, and appreciate the TWiT for being the home of this show. And if you want to support TWiT, you should check out Club TWiT. It's not much more than the price of a cup of coffee per month, and it gets you ad-free access to ad-free shows and behind-the-scenes looks, access to the Discord, all kinds of other stuff. Definitely worth taking a look at. We appreciate everybody that's here. This will get us live and on the download, and we will be back next week on the Untitled Linux Show.
No matter how much spare time you have, TWiT.tv has the perfect tech news format for your schedule. Stay up to date with everything happening in tech and get tech news your way with TWiT.tv. Start your week with This Week in Tech for an in-depth, comprehensive dive into the top stories every week. And for a midweek boost, Tech News Weekly brings you concise, quick updates with the journalists breaking the news. Whether you need just the nuts and bolts or want the full analysis, stay informed with TWiT.tv's perfect pairing of tech news programs.